you, and thank you for the opportunity to be with you. I will say in the beginning that we won't get to adequately discuss some of the issues I want to raise, but that's the purpose of the workshops tomorrow and Saturday. So I will deliberately move on rapidly. I have two messages I want to share with you. This is the first one. We are all activists now. Every one of us in this room is an activist. We have no choice. It has happened to us. The question is, will we be conscious and active activists, or will we be passive activists, or inactivists, to play with words. Globalization, I won't lecture you on it. Climate change, inequality, what happened in Paris last weekend and what happened subsequently, not just in Paris but in Syria, and what's happening in the Mediterranean in terms of migration. All those issues for me illustrate that we are all activists, like it or not. We can complain and be victims of what's happening, or we can start to build or try to build an alternative architecture, an alternative story, an alternative agenda. I want to introduce you to the people in my tale. This is Cyrus on the left, and my grandson, Donny, with the Zap sleeping suit on the right. Both of them were born this year. Donny was born in April, and Cyrus in June. And I was born in 1951. I'm 64. And I'd like you to imagine what kind of citizenship we might like to be prepared for heading into the future when they're 64 at 2079. That's a big story, but it's a story that is a real current story. And I was babysitting Donny on the right recently, and we were discussing climate change. He's 6 months old, but like all grandparents, he is a genius already. And he said to me, "Grandad, this thing about climate change that you were talking about, I hope you're not going to hand the planet to me when I'm 15 and say, here, it's broke, fix it. Because I didn't break it. And I don't want to face Donny asking me the question when my mother is 93, so let's hope I get to 80. I don't want Donny asking me the question when I'm 80, Grandad, you know this inequality that you talked about? How come you did nothing about it? Because this question was asked of Germans, who apparently allowed what happened happen in Europe. And we're allowing it to happen again, in a different context. I want to pick 3 examples. The second, my first message is we're all activists. Second message is, don't wait for other people, especially the government. You'll be disappointed. Amazing things can happen by taking action yourself. Things you don't anticipate, things you don't plan, things that weren't in the plan you had that happened because you actually went and did something. The first campaign that I was involved in as an activist was on apartheid in South Africa. And we started campaigning against an evil system of apartheid. You know about apartheid. I won't lecture you about apartheid. So here was a campaign about black people out there in South Africa. And of course, very quickly we realized that campaign was not about black people in South Africa, it was about white people in South Africa. And then we realized very quickly, actually, it wasn't about white people in South Africa, it was about white people in Europe who had relations with white people in South Africa that allowed them to oppress black people. And therefore it was about black people in Europe, and suddenly it became very complicated. What was apparently out there was actually really back here. Because if we didn't allow the South African government to do what it did, it couldn't have done it. But we continued to invest, we continued to trade, we continued to supply weapons, we continued to supply the architecture of apartheid. And we continued to defend it. Black people aren't ready. It's too soon. you don't understand. It's a different context, different culture. So actually what looked like an issue way out there was actually deeply in here. It was about who we were, what we stood for, and what we were prepared to accept. And that's been the story of my activism and my life, discovering that stuff that appears to be about other stuff is actually about me. Who I am, where I am, what I am, and what I do. A second one closer to home, and I chose these because I've been involved in all of these campaigns. Change is the norm. The question is, what kind of change, and change from what to what? And in my case, Northern Ireland was obviously a major issue. I'm Irish by birth. So the question for me was, are we going to continue to kill each other in the name of bullshit religion or bullshit politics? And the answer had to be no. And this generation of people in Ireland have decided enough is enough. The government, Bill Clinton didn't bring peace to Northern Ireland, neither did the British government, neither did the Irish government. It was people themselves who said enough is enough. We are killing our own children. And I'm quoting David Irvine, unfortunately, paramilitary leader who became a politician and a close friend of mine, who subsequently died. But between 1969 and 2010, 3,568 dead in a small little island called Ireland. And we started out working, thousands of us. We didn't even know each other. Different activity here, different activity there, different activity here. And we brought peace to Northern Ireland, and Bill Clinton came into town and sealed the deal. And it looks like the politicians sealed the deal, but actually the deal was sealed in the community by thousands of activists like you and me, doing thousands of weird and wacky things with drama, art, sport, bicycles, travel, whatever. We could talk about the mechanics of the work. I won't. Now, the other one for me, I am a father. I have 2 daughters, Aoife and Ciara. And now I have 3 grandchildren. Now, I don't know how it happened. It seemed like yesterday I was a fella with a girlfriend called Hilda, and now I have a wife called Hilda, 2 children and 3 grandsons, and I'm 64, and it happened in a flash. So don't hang about. You think you have loads of time, you don't have as much as you think you might have, and you'll go, where did those 40 years go? What happened? There was a blink, 2 minutes left, right. So, exactly, see what I mean? Exactly. So, for me, the question of women's rights, being a father of 2 girls, I couldn't be but concerned about women's rights. So for me, a campaign on women's rights in Ireland, which started with going to Wales, bringing home suitcases of condoms, which were illegal in Ireland, and selling them one at a time for the police to confiscate, until we managed, through a whole series of movements again, to have simple thing like contraception made legal. Okay? There's a great case of women who went to Northern Ireland, which was in another jurisdiction called the UK, and came back to the customs and said, I want you to arrest us because we've all had IUDs inserted. Now you're a customs officer, and you're confronted with very well-heeled women who've told you they've just broken the law by having an IUD inserted. What do? You tell them to go away? The law was an ass. The government was shown to be an ass. This is, so an IUD, I hope that's not a woman asking me. If it was a bloke, I could forgive. An intrauterine device. It is an item that can save you from some of the consequences of sex. If you need further instruction, I have nothing to offer, but I'm sure there are others who can help you work through the mechanics of it. But it involves, yeah, okay? We can do drama later, I think, possibly. For me, the central question we are looking at in active citizenship, and activism, which is the word I prefer. Active citizenship sounds like something everybody does. I'm sure David Cameron does it, I'm sure Francois Hollande does active citizenship. I'm more interested in activism. It's a bit more political, it's a bit more, you know, sexy. Our sense of ourselves, who are we? Where are we? What are we? Our place in the world, your place in the world, who are you? What's your place in the world? And what's your sense of your duty? I will finish. Change does not roll in on the wheels of inevitability, but it comes through continuous struggle. I can't tell you the brilliant story. This is a workshop tomorrow, Saturday. Somewhere along the line of development, we discover who we really are. And then we make our real decision for which we are responsible. We are all activists. The decisions we make, the decisions you make, the decisions to do and not to do, to choose and not to choose, are the decisions that will respond to the pessimism about climate. Don't waste your food. Turn off the tap when you brush your teeth. Silly little things. Turn off the light when you're going out. Become involved politically. We could go on forever. We have workshops tomorrow and Saturday to discuss that. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. The question is, where did those 12 minutes go? Where did those 40 years go? I think they went the same place, I guess.
No more questions about sex.
Yeah, I think it was rather a question about abbreviations in English than about sex, but whatever you say. So, this is an opportunity to ask Colin about his views on activism or anything else. Do we have a hand in the air? Obviously, no, not about contraception, or not that part, but anything else? We've got a hand up in the air over there.
Hi, I'm Kate from Scotland. Hi. I just wanted to use the term bullshit religion. I was just wondering if you've ever been worried about offending people and where your stance is on the balance of offending and making an impact.
Yeah, I usually worry about offending people because I haven't been honest enough. What I meant when I said bullshit religion was I meant bullshit religion, not religion, but bullshit religion. The bullshit religion that condemned my mother, Etna, to going to hospital to be served by a Catholic gynecologist who had a particular view of the womb. That's bullshit medicine inspired by bullshit theology. It was the kind of religion that told me when I was a kid that women, your very existence as a biological female was, and I quote, an occasion of sin. Most religions have a problem with women of different kinds. They have a problem with women's plumbing, they have a problem with menstruation, they have a problem with birth, they have a problem with all of that stuff. That's what I mean by bullshit religion. And yes, if it offends people, I don't set out to offend. But I do think we need honesty in the conversation about what is real theology and what is practice that has developed through churches in particular circumstances wanting to defend their political position and their power. So, yes, I have been in trouble for comments about Islam. Yes, I have been in trouble for comments about Catholicism. But that's, for me, the nature of the game. I was told one day about my daughters, Aoife and Ciara, that, I said I was a feminist, and this woman guffawed. Guffaws. Right? Big laugh. And she said, men cannot be feminists. Men can only do feminism.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question. Thank you for the answer. We would have time for one more question if we had one. So I'm waiting for another hand to raise above the heads.
Come on, don't be a bunch of pussycats.
And
Give me your best shot.
wave. There is
Give me
a
the most
hand up there. I think it was the motivation that worked.
Hello, Martin, Czech Republic. Are there any boundaries of activism, or it's completely?
Oh yes.
Free.
No, there are very clear boundaries. I am a human rights activist, so my behavior as an activist is bounded by what I will call the Human Rights Code. So for example, I never once in my activism on Northern Ireland supported the IRA, ever, even in the most difficult of circumstances. I never accepted that people had the right to kill in the name of self-defense. I never accepted the right to put bombs in cars that would, by chance, kill innocent civilians, and I never accepted that if you told the police there was a bomb in the car and they didn't clear the street, as in the slide I showed you, that you could blame the police. So there are very clear limits based on the Human Rights Code and its implications that for me place limits on activism. But activism for me is about being active appropriately and peacefully, which involves engaging in activity that some people would find very, very challenging, but doesn't involve inflicting violence on other people or denying other people their rights appropriately. Okay? I hope that answers the question, but we could explore that. For example, the question of the freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is fine, but freedom of speech is bounded by other human rights code, such as the right, the responsibility to accept that your freedom of expression may lead other people to take action. The Hitler defense is no longer acceptable. I didn't kill any Jews, but what you allowed happen led to the consequences. So for me, there are very clear boundaries in the Human Rights Code about where the limits of our behavior are met.
Thank you for the question. Thank you for the answer. Thank you, Colin.